everybody. This is James Coe here from LBR, and we have
Will Shang from LBR as well.
Cool. So we're gonna be talking a little bit about why we started this YouTube channel and website. First off, recently we've watched The Last Dance, and we both love basketball. So this will be a little conversation about one of the scenes in The Last Dance, and we're going to play it here so people can see.
Mm-hmm. Make sure you got the sound check too.
I don't have to do this. I'm only doing it because it is who I am. That's how I played the game. That was my mentality. If you don't want to play that way, don't play that way. Break.
So I guess a little bit of background on that scene. It was when he was talking about the way he pushes his teammates, right, to win, right? That's his mentality, and he's showing that emotion where that's the only way he knows how to accomplish what he has accomplished. And what are your thoughts on that, Will?
He's got the win or else kind of mentality, win at all costs, right? Mm-hmm. And what's interesting to me is I think we've evolved over time. I think when we were growing up, you kind of hear about Kobe being kind of a dick, kind of similar to Jordan, pushing his teammates, so on and so forth. I remember we grew up as Vince Carter fans because obviously we live in Toronto, and we're like, well, Vince is a nicer guy than Kobe. Why would you ever be a Kobe fan? Well, linking it back to our lives now, you're in the workforce for 10 plus years and you see things happen, and all of a sudden you realize, maybe being that way is not always the best way, but I certainly understand it a bit more. And I relate to it because I even think back to when we were kids. I remember when we were, 13, 14, playing on the court, getting our butts kicked by 23-year-olds who show up on motorcycles, right? And you're intimidated before the game even starts, but we never wanted to give up. We always fought as hard as we could until one day we beat them. So that mentality resonates after you go through certain things in life. There is a cost to winning. There is a cost to driving others to do more, right? And that's kind of my takeaway. I don't know what your takeaways are.
Yeah, I know. I think it's one of the greatest thing about it's, I think it's a combination of things, right? Like all the things that he's talked about in The Last Dance is about the way he approaches the game, the way he approaches challenges, right? And he tackles things. One of the things that he says is, he will never do what he would never tell his teammates to do something that he wouldn't do, and that's a leadership style, a leadership. A mentality, a type of leadership style, and it seems like that's the way he knows how to lead and push his team. And I think there is some merit to that in certain industries and certain workforces, I think, and sometimes it will work depending on who you work with. It may not always work in every scenario, and there are a lot of different styles, but I respect what he's saying. And for me, in my field of work, in my business, where the people that I work with, I don't think that type of leadership style will work. In terms of
why not?
Well, it's a fine balance of you can't. I mean, one, you can't be really you got to find you can't be rude to your staff, right? You can't say things to cuss them out. It's in sports, I feel like it's a little bit more extreme. In certain ways, right? And you can't be saying offensive things if they're not doing what you're asking them to, right? But I think leading by example is one of those things that I definitely can take away and say hey, like if I want to lead, I want to show them the way it's done and to ask them to do that because I do it too. Right. And I think that will work for every workforce, in my opinion, because leading by example is often one of the best ways.
But I think consistency too. I think
Yeah,
I like how
yeah,
Jordan was consistent throughout his career. Like, this is
right.
my leadership style. I'm genuinely, this is who I am,
Hmm.
and hey, I'm gonna be this way. Uh, Going back to, I think why not? Like, how do you get the most out of people? I think is a bit of an art, right? But
Yes.
I'd like to distill or try to enforce the mentality that winning at all costs is not a bad thing. If you define what at all costs means, at all
Hmm.
costs means that, we're not going to give up our families, we're not going to put people's life in danger, as an example, right? But at all costs does have a threshold. And if you define that as a leader to define what all costs is and get people to buy into it, then I think you have a better chance of success. But
Exactly, and it also
yeah.
comes down to different levels. Like, for example, in a basketball team, everybody's striving for the same goal,
Hmm.
right? And in a business, sometimes not everybody. One, people don't get paid the same, so they don't feel the same obligation to accomplish
Yeah.
certain goals, right? And there's that difference too, right? And so it's again, it's one of those things where it's a trade-off, and you have to fine tune it. As certain people don't respond the way you talk to them in that
Mhm.
way, and then now you got to find a different way to speak to them, and then they get it, right? And
Yeah.
I've definitely encountered that where some of my staff, I know how to, I don't want to say deal with them, but I know how to connect with them and communicate with them. But another set of staff might be totally different,
Yep.
and that's always
Yep.
a fine line that you have to try to making sure that you're conveying the right things without offending them, so that they still want to work for you at the end of the day, right? Because
I hate to say it because I remember someone said this to me early on in my career. I started my career at a Big Four accounting firm, and they said this, right? Money is not important. It's the passion to do what's right for yourself, your client, your team, so on and so forth. I remember I didn't really understand it, right? Because you're right out of school and you hear about all this stuff when you're going through business school, like I did, like, oh yeah, intrinsic value and soft empowerment and all this stuff. And I get it now though, because James, you touched on a good point. In a business, not everyone will be paid the same. But what you want to find is people who are willing and happy to go the extra mile because it's a calling. It's a
yes,
calling
that's
for
right.
them to deliver the best client service to your dental clinics. It's a calling for me when my team says, "Hey, I want to solve this problem for the client, no matter what it takes." I had someone 2 weeks ago work until 2 a.m. and just to finish something. It wasn't even due the next day, but she just had this calling and she had this passion to get it done.
Right.
And to find those are really, really good gems, right?
Oh, for sure, yeah. And
Yeah.
there's definitely some people that are able to do that and go the extra mile.
Yeah.
But obviously, it is, as a leader, it is your responsibility to cultivate that, right? To create that value for the staff, to say,
Yep.
okay, why do I want to go the extra mile for the company that I work with?
Yep.
Because is it because I totally believe in what they are saying and what they're trying to accomplish, or am I trying to get to the next level of pay, for example? And there's different reasons for people why they want to do certain things, right? And obviously, a combination of those items would be ideal, but
Yep.
for sure, in my opinion, it's definitely getting your staff to believe in what you're trying to accomplish, and and they find value, and they see the differences,
Yep.
right? In terms of how we, like, for example, how we approach patients, and how we, how the relationships we build with patients. And a lot of a lot of our staff believe in that, and they do help us go the extra mile, because they care for the patients, and then they care about how the relationships they've built with the patients too, right?
Hmm.
So I think that's common in some industries, for sure.
Hmm.
And but it's just an interesting topic to talk about, because in business, there's so many different ways to approach different things. And I'm also reading Kobe's book, which is more about basketball, right? But it's the mentality is very similar to Jordan, because they're kind of carbon copies of each other. But
it's the culture that you build, but it's also
yeah,
the people you surround yourself with. So I'm a
yeah,
strong believer of having a high performing team means that you're not carrying dead weight for too long, right?
yeah,
Because as you get more A players or people who are motivated to go the extra mile, if you have, let's say, another class of folks who may not be as dedicated to that, it generates a lot of friction within the team.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
That's what Jordan was saying, right? Because he's like,
Yeah.
well, if you're not going to be able to put up with me and fight with me during practice, come to finals, come to playoffs, what do I need you for, right? And that's a very powerful statement. And I think as we think about our teams, that's something we think about too.
Right. And I guess, with time, as a team grows, there's one, you set up a culture that the team kind of follows through with, and they always, they always do. And if they bring in a new staff, it's always easier to train that staff and to join that culture. Right. And if they don't, right.
Yep.
They fall off, and that's that. Right. And when you build a team, it comes down to sifting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like putting people through a sieve, I guess, if you want to put it that way. And the ones that match and the ones that work with your philosophy will stay. And I guess that's kind of what, at least in an NBA team, that's what you'll get, right? You're going to get the top players and the ones that can withstand
the pressure,
the abuse, if you will.
Yeah, the abuse.
Then they're able to win championships, right? And it worked for them. Right?
Yeah.
But I guess.
And going back to Jordan's point, though, right? He doesn't need to do this, but he's doing this anyways. You think about it, he didn't really need to go that crazy. Yeah. He had the reputation, he had the money. It wasn't the money that motivated him, right?
No.
But I think one thing to take away is I think every teammate on his team would know, first, he's putting in the work, but two, they know where they stood compared to him, or where they stood on the team. And I think that's important these days to make clear to employees. It's like, hey, if they're having performance issues, or if they're not meeting thresholds, too many managers, I think these days, kind of hold off on that feedback, because it's really hard giving bad feedback.
Yeah.
But I think that does the employees a disservice, because they're not sure what they're doing wrong, or they may not even know that they're not being as effective as the expectations are. So something interesting to take away. Obviously, we can't do it the same way Jordan does. We can't yell at them and swear at them. But it's an interesting. We picked this video, guys, because as we think about what Jordan was saying, it ties back to our day-to-day lives in many ways. But we're also, during the COVID times, we're going to be interviewing a few, let's call them business owners or successful folks in their own kind of career, to get perspectives. Because I've had so many conversations where I thought it was going to go one way, and then it pivoted and went a whole different direction. We had a conversation with Dav, who is a teacher, and we spent a good chunk of time talking about physical exercise and the importance of that for children. Didn't think we're going to go there, right? Yeah. Same thing with some of the other ones we're going to have down the line. So anyway, a quick preview on what's to come.
Cool. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more interesting content. Click below to subscribe.